This 80 series Land Cruiser should have been fixed a long time ago, but the deeper we look, the more problems we find.
The engine was once redone because a piston broke.
Bad adjustments, reckless work and dirt where it should never be. And somehow this thing still kept going.
What I see actually is that the timing is actually not correct. Bad news, on the first cylinder we actually have no valve clearance.
So today we go through everything. Timing belt, water pump, valve clearance and the fuel pump.
Here we have the cover. The car blows out really bad black smoke.
So after all of this, is it going to run the way it should? Or is all hope lost?
So guys, the 80 series is back. And what can I say? Again, a lot to do. So, what do I mean with a lot to do? First of all, the thing is loud. When I mean loud, I mean valve loud. I mean the last 2 times I did something on this car, it was more or less repairing stuff other mechanics messed up. And now we are on the 3rd time and I think we are at the finishing line to make it a really nice and drivable Land Cruiser again with some horsepower, because it lacks some horsepower. So now we are driving to our new shop and we will talk later. What we are actually doing on this 80 series, besides adjusting the valves, is getting in a new AC compressor, a generator, water pump, also timing belt, everything on the timing belt, like the pulley, the hydraulic tensioner, a new whisker clutch, and sure, all the gaskets on the intake. You see, like everything is, that's like the best part of it. Everything is original. Besides the AC compressor and the generator, they are Densos, but Toyota is Denso, so it is kind of original.
So let's get started. There's quite a lot that has to come off first, starting with the intake, the EGR and all the lines around it. On these engines everything is pretty tightly packed, so just getting access takes some time.
Now I unbolted nearly everything on the intake. I have to get rid of the EGR, it's already loose, and the manifold that goes over the valve cover. And the next thing after that will be removing the valve cover, getting all the bolts around it loose so we can take a look underneath it.
It takes time, but there is no shortcut here. Because once we get the valve cover off, that's where we finally see what's actually going on inside. And I've already seen something I don't quite like.
We have the valve cover removed and now we see the symphony of mechanics on a Toyota, especially on the 1HD FT. Just a little bit about the backstory. The engine was once redone because a piston broke. A lot of things happened when they put together the engine. One thing I discovered, but you will see later, the thing is about the valves. You hear that? How loose they are. The thing is, if you can't adjust valves, just don't even try it. Just let the valve cover on. It's the best thing. And the next thing I discovered on this car is the guy paid lots of money to get the engine redone. I think it is possible to get the bottom 2 bolts in, because if you don't, there is gravel in the valve cover. It got in with the mud because this car is a real off-roader and overlander. When we look down on the timing belt, everything is full with mud. Not so nice, but yeah, always when I do engine work or transmission work, I discover the failures of the guy before me. But yeah, it's just frustrating at some point.
The owner was actually lucky nothing worse happened here. And that's exactly the kind of thing that can cause problems later on, if you don't catch it in time.
So I have disassembled most of the engine front. So in order to get the water pump out, actually it is pretty hidden. So if we look down there, well, I have to get the light somehow. We see the water pump here. Here we have the timing belt. And on the bottom you see the crankshaft. What we have to do now is get the timing belt aligned. And also I have to get off the camshaft sprocket here, to get this plate off because the water pump is hiding behind the plate, or a part of it. Actually made it pretty hard to access the water pump on a 80 series or on a 1HD FT. But in my experience, they nearly hold up like 350,000 kilometers. So when you change the water pump, please get a Toyota one. Then the thing will run probably to the end with the second water pump and everything will be fine.
But with that out of the way, the next problem was already waiting for us.
What I see actually is that the timing is actually not correct. The pump is half a tooth off. So it's also probably the explanation why this car is it doesn't accelerate as it should, but yeah, I think there are some points on this car that cost him horsepower.
Yeah, that's definitely not something you want to find. But at least now we know what's going on. So next step, get the front plate off and pull the water pump.
So there we have the water pump. It seems to be the original one. The car has on it 350,000 kilometers. That is what I said. Normally they last between 300,000 and 400,000. This one, there is no play in the shaft, just a slight noise when you turn it. It's the bearings. But there is the leaking hole, so in case there gets water into the bearings, it leaks out here. And you see when the front of the engine is dripping water, that's probably the water pump. Now the timing belt is back on. We put on the front plate of the engine. Here we put on a new sprocket. Down there we have the idler arm. And there we have the hydraulic tensioner. It's very important that you always replace the hydraulic tension on it. And the idler arm, show you the old one. Momentos. There's the old one. Here we have the idler arm. Doesn't matter if it is a 1HD FT or IE, the idler arm is the same. So what I always have on these idler arms is, Toyota does recommend you put a little bit of seal down on the threads, but not on the idler arm. Yeah, right? Because that thing was glued in again. On every second Land Cruiser the thing is glued in. The idler arm should move. That's why there is a hydraulic tensioner. So when the engine gets hot or cold or whatever, the tensioner on the timing belt is always the same. But to do this, the idler arm has to be able to move. So, next thing the customer wants on this car is get a new generator in, get a new USA compressor in. I show you a little bit. It's nearly for me, really nearly. Here we have a Denso alternator. Look at this high quality part. I don't make any commercial for Toyota, but still, I mean, such a quality thing. Even the plugs are there is grease in it. It is so nice. Back to the topic, then a new AC compressor, yeah, valve gasket and everything, a new visco clutch, yeah, and the valve needs some adjustment. That's we will do when we have everything in terms of timing belt. Yeah, and the markings now on the timing belt are spot on. What is important, I mean, half a tooth on a diesel is actually pretty bad. I mean, when you go to like a Volkswagen diesel, if you're off, if you are like one tooth off, the thing runs really fast. This thing doesn't have ACU, that's why it doesn't throw a check engine light, because it's a mechanical engine. I'm actually really thrilled to drive it afterwards with the adjusted valves, and the timing belt marks spot on, because I think it will have more power. A lot of things on these cars like add up, because there is like, I think it does lose some boost on the gaskets of the intake manifold, because there were old intake manifolds in it. Also the threads were damaged everywhere, and the timing belt is off, the valves are off, and the pump is for sure off. But when we at least have done these three things, probably the last thing will be pump adjustments, but we will see how much they turned on the bolts or screws, like on top of it and from behind. Let's go to work.
Quite a bit has piled up on this car over time. Just a lot of small things adding up. But now it is time to put everything back together and see if all of that actually makes a difference.
There we have two new alternator belts, original Toyota, made by Mitsubishi. There is a cool feature in this bag, actually, from the bag. The number of fan belts for the 4M engine. The 4M engine is Celica Supra, should be the 2.6 liter engine. Increased from 1 to 2. Julian Nansen, 1977. Toyota keeps care on customers, also with older cars. Nice boys.
That's typically Toyota fashion. But back to the 80 series. Now it's time to adjust the valves. First we turn the engine over twice by hand on the crankshaft. Then we check the camshaft marks to make sure everything lines up properly. After that, I mark the intake and exhaust valves, so I know exactly what I am working on. And that's when I noticed something was definitely not right.
Actually, bad news. On the first cylinder, we actually have no valve clearance. So I assume the valve is probably pushed a little bit open, always, because if there you have none, it's a problem. That's exhaust. Exhaust has probably too much, and intake has none. Good job. I now take the feeler gauge and start with intake on the first cylinder. First of all, loosen the rocker bolt until I can shovel the gauge in between the rocker bolt and the follower is actually moving, and we have a little gap in between. And then we shovel in the feeler gauge in a certain spec, and then we adjust the valve down here, and then we will be okay. Actually, the manual calls for 0.7 to 0.53. I didn't get in a 0.50. They are actually between 0.42 to 0.43, somewhere in between, so they're actually too tight on the exhaust. Now we will loosen on the rocker arm, and afterwards we turn it down. So first of all, we loosen that up. We get both loose. So 1 is loose, 2 is loose. We can get the 50 in, so we loosen it until we can slide it. So there is a bit of pressure on the gauge, but not much. We tighten up the rocker. So you adjust on the rocker arm actually just roughly the valve clearance. Then you go down to the follower and adjust on the follower the fine. You make the fine tuning actually on the follower. Then we tighten everything up. Now we have a sliding, everything is tightened up. Wait to get the wrench out. So we have a sliding movement, and that's actually how you adjust the valves on these things. It isn't that difficult, just takes time, open, close, until you are where you want to be, or should be.
With everything adjusted, it's just finishing things off. Cleaning the valve cover and fitting a fresh gasket before putting it back on.
Next thing is to clean up the RE silicone stuff. It's important, I mean, it's just 3 gaskets, just buy them new when you adjust valves. Half of the cars I do leak on the intake manifold and lose boost pressure.
So it is definitely worth replacing the gaskets and cleaning everything up properly, just to make sure it all seals the way it should again. After that, it's just putting everything back together. And then we are at the moment of truth. Is it going to start the way it should, or are we going to run into the next problem?
Everything is tight, everything is controlled. Batteries are in, oil is in, and now we will start it up. And look how it sounds. I hope it is much more silent than it was before. Sounds good. So the car is much quieter than it was before. I mean, you know why. And now we will make a little test drive. We have more torque, I assume, because we lost some boost on the intake manifold. I hope the boost pressure isn't too high now. But we will see. The car is a little warmer. So we drove for around a half hour around in town. The thing is warm. And now we will look how it pulls. Pulls good. There is some torque. Pulls a lot better than before.
How much boost do we pull?
0.9, so about the same as before. Actually, I'm pretty amazed because it is much more drivable than it was before. And I have to say, I never thought that someone messed up valves in such a manner.
So it already runs pretty well, but there is definitely still more in it. So next step, we need to adjust the pump.
I drove behind the car, so up to about 1000 RPM per minute. The car blows out really bad black smoke. There is a different fuel pin in it from what I was told. And when we look down there, we see the boost compensator. Here's the boost compensator, and also the fuel pin goes in there. So the star wheel is actually, there is a diaphragm in it. There is the star wheel, there is a spring in it, and with the star wheel, when you turn it up, you put more pressure on the spring and that pushes on the diaphragm. If you turn it down, pushes less on the diaphragm. What does that mean? The diaphragm gets pushed with boost, and when you have less tension on that spring, that means it will start to inject more fuel earlier. And in this case, I think it is turned down to the absolute limit because the car blows bad black smoke. Yeah, and I have to get it right. It's just too much. And also afterwards, because I noticed, because everything now runs as it should run, that when you throttle him hard, that there is nearly no black smoke visible. And also the exhaust gas temperature, because the car has an exhaust gas temperature gauge, is actually low. It's about 700 degrees Celsius, and the EGT probe is in the exhaust manifold. There is room for a little bit of more fuel, but we will get there. I mean, I can't give you an advice how to turn it up because that thing, somebody already turned on it. So I will probably just get it back where it is okay. But on a stock 80 with a 3-inch exhaust, you can say 1/4 on the big screw, fuel screw, in is good, and also on the star wheel turn it 180 degrees in, and then normally the car should go like Schmidt's Katze. It is on German, means really good. Don't play around too much on the pump, because actually when you have no HED gauge, it's pretty easy to kill the engine. It makes good power when you turn on the bump and the boost, but the question is how long. Okay, now we get the cover off. There we have the cover. There's the cover. And here we see the hose that is connected, a vacuum or boost line in that case. And it actually, because there is a spring in it, does push on the fuel pin. And the deeper the fuel pin goes in, as more fuel we make. And now our question is, what did they do because the car smokes so bad? Before, when there is an original fuel pin, don't move the diaphragm. So you go over here and mark your diaphragm. That direction on the original one would be more fuel, and that would be less fuel. Why is that? Because the original fuel pin, actually, you have a taster and you have the fuel pin. What is a taster? I don't know what a taster is. A feeler, let's call it a feeler, and the fuel pin has a, let's say, curve. Let's call it a curve. The pump is mechanical, the boost does push on the diaphragm and does push the fuel pin in, and so the feeler nose gets pushed. The feeler knows how much diesel it gives more. I think that is understandable what I'm talking about. And also what I want to adjust now is not left or right. What I want to adjust, if you look underneath there, there is a little wheel called the star wheel, and I think that thing is all the way turned down. And that's the reason why that thing smokes so bad without boost. So it stops to smoke at around 1300 RPM. Normally, I don't know if the fuel pin is a different one. The owner said he was there. I could pull the fuel pin out with the diaphragm. Then I have to remove this potentiometer and this bracket. And there is a 17 millimeter pin in it. Actually, it's a bolt and spring. I could turn this out, and so I can get the fuel pin in and out, because if you don't turn that thing out, you will be able to get it out, but not in again. And on the aftermarket fuel pins, I should be able to slide it back in, but I don't have to slide it back in. I just can adjust the star wheel from here. Mark it, as I said, normally 180 degrees on a stock engine. 180, so 90, 180, so half a turn, and we will put it back now to 90 degrees. And normally then, I mean, it smokes really bad, probably a little more than 90 degrees, and then we should be okay-ish, and then we have to drive it, and then we will see it. About the fuel pin position. Performance pins don't have like 5 different maps on it. The performance pin just have one side, and that's it. If you have original pin, don't turn it in either direction. I mean, you can play around, but not play around by like turning it half of it, try 1/4, then drive. Does it run better? Does it have more power? Also, the original fuel pin is not, it doesn't mean because you turn more, it gets more, but not in every RPM range. That means it could go a little better when you turn it 1/4, and if you turn it a little bit over 1/4, the lower RPM could be worse, but the top RPM could be better. That's the easy way to, let's say, tune a little bit, make a fine tuning on it without turning the big fuel screw in the back. Let's say not a play around thing. There is an actual method how to do it. I talked before about the 17 millimeter bolt, and there you can get in a gauge and measure it, but everything in there is in the Toyota engine manual. Another thing I want to say about adjusting the pump. If someone watches this who is the new 80 owner and doesn't know anything about the service history of his car, I advise you, get your injectors done. You burn so easily a hole in them. And afterwards is the big crying, oh, Toyota engines does cost so much money. Yeah, they do. Freakish. Lots of money. So don't turn around on it when you're unsure what you're doing. I probably did lots of these engines. It makes it for me very easy to know where I turn things and how it should smoke and how it should drive and how it should sound. I mean, they can make power, but also the fuel line is not big enough on these things. The pump, what actually pulls the fuel from the tank, is also running out really fast. So be really careful what you're doing. We turned the fuel screw 1/8 in, so nearly nothing. Actually probably 1/10. I already felt it pulls. So let's see what it can do. So I had my brothers out of the car with the camera. What we look now for is how much smoke trail I will make when I fly. As I said, I will stay in a safe place. There would be more possible, but I don't do more without a dyno. Oh, let's go. In terms of exhaust gas temperature, we are still safe. I now will drive on the freeway to throttle it in the 4th gear for some kilometers to know where the peak exhaust gas temperature is, because we know what the exhaust gas temperature before was. I hope we will be around 800-ish degrees, so we have lots of safe room in terms of heat resistance. So we're on the freeway and pull. I would say it moves pretty good for 3.2, 3.1 ton car. And forward. There we are, 670. Have to go from the accelerator pedal. We will pull it afterwards with the 3rd gear when I turned around. So we are not too fast, but have to load on the engine. And now we are coming to a point where everything should work as Toyota intended it. What we are doing now is my brother drives back on the freeway, and I look how high does the exhaust temperature go on a long road, like for
3, 2,
ruhig bei 3 Ruhe.
3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5. Bitte.
Jetzt overgegangen mit der Temperatur.
Bitte 2, 2,
Jetzt fahren wir da auf 670,
3000.
670. Ja, auf 700 wieder aufgegangen. Passt, aber we actually have less temperature than we had before. I mean, it also got colder a bit outside. We will have so much safe room in terms of exhaust gas temperature. As I said, I didn't tune him as much that we could have a problem. Seems very, very okay to me. It runs fine, pulls fine. And if you like this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to see more 80 series content, we already made content with this 80 series and also other 80 series. We see us the next time.